There's a change to the running order. So this is the last council meeting this decade, and it's just before Christmas. I've asked us to proceed the council meeting today with a couple of songs from the Wakefield Metropolitan District Council Workers Choir, also known as One Voice, are going to give us a couple of Christmas songs. So if you'd like to be seated and enjoy the entertainment. that is the one voice choir and their conductor. So good afternoon once again, and could you now join me in being upstanding whilst my chaplain, Reverend Rob Drost, leads those of us who wish to participate in prayer. Those who do not wish to participate can use the time to quietly reflect or leave the chamber and rejoin us on agenda item number 2. At this juncture, I'd like to remind all members to switch off their mobile phones and use electronic devices with respect to other members. Councillors, Reverend Rob Drost.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we move towards Christmas, we give thanks for the story of the birth of one small child, for shepherds and magi, of angels and the star, and of parents trying to find a room to rest, who had travelled from another place, but who found themselves shunned from door to door. May this holy story prompt our thinking for those who will be struggling to be welcomed to this Christmas tide. So let us pray. God of peace and reconciliation, we are here to make decisions for our communities in which we serve as elected representatives. May we use only our best skills and judgment, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral as we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us. May we always act in accordance with what is best for our communities and its citizens. For we ask this in the name of the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Ishmael, who calls us to be one in mind and in deed, for the good of all people. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. Item number 2 on the council summons is to receive disclosures by members of interest in matter under consideration. Will members declaring an interest please identify themselves and their particular interest clearly and complete the usual yellow form before the end of the meeting. Firstly, colleagues, are there any disclosable pecuniary interests to be declared? Are there any significant other interests to be declared? Are there any other interests to be declared at all? Thank you. Agenda item 3 is to receive and confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on 13th of November 2019. These minutes can be found on pages 1 to 5 in book 7. Are these minutes moved? Are these minutes seconded? All in favour? That is carried. Agenda item number 4 is to receive apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have been received in advance of this meeting from Councillors Byford, Miss Carrington, Mrs Harvey, Wassell, Miss Williams, and from the Chief Executive, and also Councillor Mrs Collins. I'm also aware that Councillors Garbutt, both Mr and Mrs, will be leaving after 1 hour. Councillor Mrs Stansby has also been added to that list. Are there any others? Councillor Mrs Taylor. Any more? And Councillor Mrs Spitz. And Councillor Mrs Spitz. Yeah? We're all done there? Thank you very much. Agenda item 5 is to deal with such a... Firstly, I would like to thank the staff of the quiet scene for sitting their hearts out and entertaining the vote prior to this meeting, and also in the issue of Wakefield Walk earlier on today. I would also like to extend my sincere thanks to everyone who supported my charity so far, and I want to particularly mention an unexpected donation that took place last week, when I recently received from our own legal services section, who raised over £650 by selling some obsolete books. A big thanks goes to Gillian and the team for donating money which raised my charity. The Wear Your Christmas Jumper to Work Day event raised again over £560. So my heartfelt thanks goes out to the council staff for looking up their Christmas jumpers to join me in raising this initiative. We've also had a varied month of civic engagements, which include our annual Christmas visits to care homes, where we've enjoyed a chat and a mince pie also with many of the residents. We've also enjoyed many Christmas concerts and carol singing during this month. particularly yesterday when I went down to the place. My own annual civic council service is being held tonight at Wakefield Cathedral at 7 o'clock. So if you would like to sing along with the selection of traditional Christmas carols, be entertained by the excellent Featherstone Nail House Choir, by Crockton Silver Band, and by children from the Princess Library, please join me in this free event, which will be seated in the cathedral at 7:15. Preceding that and during after that, with the Wakefield Street Kitchen, we will be distributing these, which are little Christmas angels. Inside, they have the details of the Samaritans and various other contact details of people who are a little bit vulnerable at Christmas may need. And we'll be doing an angel bombing exercise to attack those around the place, and we'd like to offer those to the youth. Just to remind everyone, my next May Sex Night event is scheduled to take place on the 19th of February 2020. So please continue to nominate your individuals or groups in your communities for this role. I'd like to also thank those who bought a ticket for the Shop Like a VIP for £1.50 initiative, which will be drawn after the council meeting. I hope you all have a wonderful festive break, and I look forward to seeing you all again in the new year. So it's a Merry Christmas to everyone and a happy, healthy, peaceful and prosperous 2022. Finally, the leader has requested that the council consider agenda item number 10, cabinet and governance arrangements, before the executive leader's report. And I have given permission for this to take place. Thank you, colleagues, and that concludes my announcements. As no deputations have been received, we will now move on to item number 10, which is the cabinet and governance arrangement for 2019-2020. This report can be found on pages 57 to 62 in your supplementary agenda. An updated version of the report has been circulated at the meeting. Is the report up? Is the report seconded? Are there any questions in relation to the report? That is carried. We'll now revert back to the agenda sequence by taking agenda item number 7, which is the leader's report. Once the leader has presented her report, she will answer any questions from members on the matters raised in her report. A maximum of 30 minutes will be allowed for her report, followed by 30 minutes for questions and answers. For the first time, Councillor Jeffrey, can you give your report as leader?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I say we want to send our best wishes to Mary, our Chief Executive, who I understand is on the mend, but she's had a rough time, and I think we should all think about her. And also our colleague Alan Wassell, who's undergone an operation, a very serious operation this week, and he's quite poorly. And I think if we could send our best wishes to him, I think that's important to do. I'd just like to, as you'd expect, comment on the election. I won't pretend that the election results weren't decimating for our party. Areas such as ours, who voted overwhelmingly to leave the European Union, made their voices heard loud and clear last Thursday. The political landscape of our district and the country as a whole has changed dramatically. Our job now is to work and provide quality public services and opportunities for everybody in Wakefield, as well as securing the future of our communities and places. That means partnering with other public bodies, community groups, and with the government. We need to bolt ourselves into any government initiatives that come forward, and already we've been accepted for 2 initiatives with government. Just recently we've had clarification on that. The government has said that they recognise that the austerity has not been the right way forward, and they are looking at that, and we're going to hold them to account, and I know that the opposition will want to do that as well. What we want to do is the best for our district, and we all need to work together. We need to work to tackle poverty and help local people and their families to run just not creating jobs, but creating more quality jobs and giving people advice and support where they're needed so that people have more money in their pockets. Responding to climate change and its threats will be a major priority, and with a wide-ranging action plan will be published in the new year. We need to look at ways of doing things differently. Regeneration is something that I've pioneered for many years, but we do need to look at how we do things and how it will affect us in climate change. And we may be on different sides across this chamber, but what side we're on is the people of our district. And I think we all need to work together to do the best for the district. And going forward as a council, we need to listen, focus and act. And under our leadership, my new deputy leader and myself, this is what will happen. The thing I'd like to report on is the devolution deal. I attended my first leaders meeting last Friday, and we agreed now to up the game. We've written to the Prime Minister, and it looks as if there will be a deal for West Yorkshire in the new year in January. We need to see how that goes. We await with interest the result that we get back from the Prime Minister's letter, and obviously I will report back to Council. You've seen that we've made some new appointments in the previous report, and I really want to welcome Jack as my new deputy leader. I think we will be a great team and work well together. The other appointments are Darren Byford for Regeneration and George Ayre as Deputy Cabinet Member. And I think with the new team we shall work forward. I know it's an extra Cabinet position, but we will be looking at rationalisation in the new year and bringing forward our plans in January, how we look at doing things like that. We need to really realign some of the portfolios that have been bolted on. Some of them don't fit. The climate change one needs sorting out. So we will be coming back in January on that. So that's my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Are there any questions on Councillor Mr. Jeffrey's report? Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'm just going to welcome the new changes to the council and, say that on behalf of the Conservative group here, I think, like you said there, on political matters we will disagree, and as opposition we will hold accountable the government and also you as the leader of the council and cabinet members. But I think in the majority of cases, like I've said previously, I think it's important that in matters that affect the Wakefield district that we all fight for that, and that's what I will do today, and ask all members of our group as well, and also the other councillors that are in the chamber to do that as well. So where there's matters of interest of Wakefield, the people of Wakefield, we make sure that we fight together on those matters. And I think they're the things that, like I've always said when Councillor Box was here as well, we're all Wakefield councillors and we want Wakefield district to do well in matters in there. And we've seen that as well. But I think it's important, reflect on the election result, that we're also Democrats as well. We accept election results. And it's not about gloating or anything here. I'm not here to do that. But I do think there's a certain disconnect between MPs and their constituents, which we've seen in this election. And I'm not saying that, I actually believe that, and I've said this to councillors all around here, and I think it's important when we do have a poor MP, whether we do it privately or publicly, like Councillor Tully has done in the past, we actually call these MPs out. And some of you saw me on the count calling John Trickett out, and I will always call him out as well. It's important, not just John Trickett, whether it's councillor, our MP, the newly elected Mr. Khan or Andrew Jenkins, any party, that they have that disconnect, because you and me suffer at the polling stations when they say and do things that are against the wishes of the people, because people don't know the difference. Some people don't know the difference between an MP and a councillor. So it's important when we come into the council chamber that we hold these people accountable for what they do. And I think it's important that, like Councillor Jeffries has said there, we write a letter to our new MPs and the old ones as well, to come and see what's happening at the local level as well, the cuts that have happened. And obviously the Conservative government under Boris Johnson has said he didn't agree with austerity. And obviously I've said what I've done in the past is recorded, so I'm not going to withdraw and say something totally different, because I'm not a hypocrite. So I'm going to stick with what I've said. But I do think it's important, because the party has changed its line, that we fight together and ask the MPs to make sure that we do have a decent devolution deal. Devolution in words or effects, and it brings real accountability to the local level, including over schools, transport, infrastructure, business. Otherwise, it'd be useless deal and it won't benefit the area. We need a deal that benefits the West Yorkshire area, the Yorkshire area. I think that's important. I've always said it, that we make sure that we fight for our regions. And the power from London is coming away. And I think there's been a lot of centralisation of power that I don't agree with. It needs to pass over so it benefits our regions. And like I've said, as to Mr Mayor as well, we'll show a different approach, working together, but also make sure that we hold everybody accountable in the positions that they've held as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Armin. Are there anybody else want to make any comments? Denise, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think it would be a good idea if we do a joint letter writing to our new MP, ask him if he'd like to come in and see what we do here and talk to him about our plans and anything that we need, and then he can lobby on our behalf. And that's the same for all of the MPs. They need to listen to the people of our district and do the best for us down in Parliament.
Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, I've just got a couple of points I'd like to and questions really. I mean, first of all, I'd just like to say in terms of appointing a cabinet member for climate change, obviously that's really welcome, and I think it is the biggest issue, and that's one thing that Liberal Democrats, even our former leader now, Joe Swinson, had said, is there is an issue bigger than Brexit, and it's for climate change, because there is no planet B in the words of Greta Thunberg. I am a little bit disappointed it's taken this long to get there, but at the end of the day, it's action and it's going forward, so it's a step in the right direction. I was just wondering, in terms of the action plan, obviously the motion that Council passed in May was to have a full report back with an action plan within 6 months, and that's not happened, and I just wondered if the Council would be able to reflect, as leader of the Council, you'd be able to reflect on that and make sure that going forward, if we're going to set deadlines, they are reasonable, achievable, and what we can do to make sure we hit them in the future. The other thing that, obviously, that you've also mentioned was the general election results and the fact that we are now in all likelihood leaving the European Union. I just wondered if the Council has taken on any additional responsibilities or what more it could be doing to provide assistance to EU citizens living in our district to make sure that we get them all registered with settled status. And I wondered if there was anything more that the Council could do to assist in that, to make sure that come whatever happens next year, that we've got something in place to make sure that here in Wakefield we're looking after the EU citizens who contribute to our area. And no, I take the point that's been raised by both sides here about working together, but I think the point that I would just make to you as leader of the Council as well is we can't just all be happy and get along. There is going to be disputes, and I think one thing that, even as a Liberal Democrat, that I don't want to see is the fact that the Conservatives are now going to try and just completely absolve themselves from austerity. And I think that you as leader of the Council should be making sure that when Boris Johnson's talking about money for Wakefield, money for here, there and everywhere, that you get that. And I really do wish you the best, Denise.
Thanks very much. With regarding to the EU citizens, we are actually looking into that, and we'll let you know what the plan is. But there is a plan to do more on that. And I'm not naive enough to think that we're all going to be having a great loving. We should not be doing that. But we need to work together for the good of the district. But we shall be opposing each other on many occasions, I'm sure. So don't feel that we're all going to get cosy. I don't think for a minute that we are. And we shall hold Boris Johnson to account. He's made promises for the North. He's coming to the North. And we shall see what he does, but we shall hold them to account on that. So you've no illusions about that. I'm not naive, and I know what the game is.
Thank you. Councillor Tully.
I just want to comment on what the leader had said, and the leader of the Conservative group as well, that if we choose to ignore people that either send us here or our representatives to Parliament, we get what we deserve. And I think last week were a lesson in you get what you deserve when you choose to ignore what the people who send you to Parliament, or in fact send us here, do. And I think that needs to be a lesson that we all need to learn. But we get too busy navel-gazing into last week. I think it's incumbent on this council to make sure that the new Member of Parliament for Wakefield is going to have his feet metaphorically held to the fire, because this council has seen millions and millions of pounds worth of budget cuts over the last 10 years, which has resulted in us all suffered across all our wards, whether the Tory wards, Labour wards, or a combination, or all three. And I think it's important that, because we find ourselves in the situation that we are, that we need to make sure that these people do deliver. And if we're going to have a a devolution deal based on the West Yorkshire or Leeds City region footprint. I think it's also incumbent as well as part of that deal as well that we owe the government's feet to the fire regarding the situation about east-west transport links as well as and situations within our National Health Service. All major issues that were raised in the election campaign. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Last week's election was a general election in name only. It was a second referendum on getting Brexit done, whether we like it or not, because in my part of the world, the Tories actually lost 300 votes. They didn't gain that many actually in Wakefield, but I'm not here to pass judgment on that. The bottom line is the Conservative Member of Parliament won in Wakefield. Congratulations to the guy. I've never met him. I'm hoping to meet him, hopefully shortly. But I would ask that as a council that we all come here to do the best for the people that send us here. And a lesson that we can all learn is if when we fail to do that, the consequences can be dire.
Thank you. So they want a question to Denise for the observation, right? Thank you. Any more questions for Denise's report? No? Okay, thank you very much. We shall now move on to agenda item number 8, which is to receive a written Cabinet Member's report in accordance with the Council Procedure Rule 14.1. Reports can be found from pages 1 to 52 on the supplementary agenda. Cabinet Members have up to 5 minutes to speak and present their report, in which there will be a further 15 minutes allocated to enable each Cabinet Member to respond to any questions or brief comments on the issues within their respective portfolio. The first report is from Councillor George Eyre, who will move the portfolio owner's report for regeneration and economic growth in the absence of Councillor Darren Byford. This report can be found on pages 1 to 8. Councillor Eyre, would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief. Obviously, it's my first day in the job. But in doing so, I just wanted to make one point, really, and that is, obviously, this portfolio was the new leaders. It was Councillor Jeffries, and I know that she worked extremely hard in this portfolio area. And I just want to take this minute to just thank you to Denise for the work that she's put on in regeneration and economic growth. You'll see from the report there's progress happening in various areas, and with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll move my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions or brief comments on the report? If not, then thank you, Councillor Eyre, for moving that. The next is the portfolio holder for adults and health, which can be found on pages 9 to 12. Councillor Mrs Septonstall, can you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In moving my report, I'd like to personally offer my congratulations to Chantel Pattison and the Shared Lives team in winning Colleague of the Year and Team of the Year respectively at the recent Pride Awards ceremony. I'd also like to take this opportunity to say a big thank you to all of council staff and carers who is going to be working over the holiday period to support our residents. And finally, I've put out some information yesterday and today regarding staying safe and well, particularly over the holiday period. It would be great if we can all promote across our networks and to all our residents. That would be great. So with that, I move my report. Thank you.
Can I just echo, since I've been to quite a few homes and to elderly people, seen a lot of elderly people, residents this week, echo that what you said about all the people who look after them at Christmas. They do a great job. Any other questions or comments to Councillor Mrs Septonstall? I've got Councillor at the back there, Councillor Mitchell, sorry.
Right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to comment on the new suicide bereavement service on agenda page 10, please. I mean, I represent a ward which had quite a lot of suicides, particularly of young people, over last year, and pleased is probably the wrong word, but I'm very pleased that we have this service is rolling out. As I mean, it must be awful to lose a child. It must be an awful lot worse if they've chosen to die, and this is something which is desperately needed. I also like the ambitious targets trying to reduce suicide as well, so I wish it every success, and I'm very pleased it's here. Thank you.
Any other questions or brief comments on the report? No? Okay, thank you, Councillor Septonstall, for that report. The next is the report of the portfolio holder for children and young people, which can be found on pages 13 to 17. Councillor Mrs Isherwood, could you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to comment on the celebration of the Achievement for Children in Care event and congratulate all the young people involved. And I know you were in attendance, and I think you'll agree it was a wonderfully exuberant event with children running all over the place and really enjoying themselves. I have mentioned the DFE Commissioner visit. Unfortunately, we won't have the result of his findings until the new year now because of the election. But as soon as I have those, I will let members know. And with that, I'll move my report.
I particularly like the young man who did the impersonation of Boris Johnson at the start. The only thing that let him down is he had his shirt tucked in. But any other comments on that report? No? Thank you very much, Councillor Isherwood, Mrs Isherwood. The next is the portfolio order for communities and environment, which can be found on pages 19 to 25. Councillor Mrs Cummins, would you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a couple of things to add to my report. I'd like once again to thank Roger Parkinson and the tree wardens and volunteers, those people that go the extra mile, ensuring that we do keep up with our quota of trees across the district. And they won the Woodland Trust Volunteers Award recently. So once again, congratulations to them. We've also been nominated for the Litter Pick Me Up campaign for the Keep Britain Tidy Award, which we'll know the outcome of that in February. Also, on that same theme, we are continuing the litter picks across the district, again with fantastic volunteers. We've got a couple of dates on the 27th, just after Christmas, so out there getting some fresh air and walking that turkey off. And I think we've got one in Renthorpe Park, we've got one in Airedale and one in Upton. So anybody that wants to go along to those, then please feel free to do so. I'd like to thank Councillor Carrington. She's not here today, but she put out an excellent briefing note on what was happening over Christmas for those people who are less fortunate than ourselves. There are several areas that are doing a Christmas meal, and I know Councillor Stansby and Councillor Williams, who are not here today, and myself will be working in Outwood on Christmas Day, helping those people that are either lonely or homeless or in temporary accommodations. And finally, Mr Mayor, Faith, Albert and myself are really looking forward to welcoming you to Havercroft tomorrow. I don't think you've ever been, but we're looking forward to welcoming you to our centre tomorrow to deliver one of your awards. And with that, wish you all a Merry Christmas, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions to Councillor Cummins? No? I've been to Havercroft myself personally. I've got customers out there, so I know where it is, but I'm looking forward to coming there myself as well tomorrow. I'll see you in the morning. Yeah. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Mrs Cummins. Moving on to the portfolio order for corporate services, which can be found on pages 27 through to 33. Councillor Shaw, would you like to introduce your report to Council, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Before I pick out a couple of things in my report, there's a number of volunteers, too many to really name in here now, but a lot of our staff within Wakefield run, and I'm sure you know, Mr Mayor, as well as your charity, a lot of staff have been running some excellent volunteer systems right across the district. I'd just like to point out that this is over and above their roles in Wakefield, and it shows the caring nature of a lot of our staff. So I'd like to thank them all, certainly publicly in this arena, for everything they do and how they go beyond the pale on a regular basis. In saying that, just pick a couple of points out. Exercise Morning Jill is informed. We can all see what happened in Doncaster and the learning that certainly Doncaster, and certainly we've got, because as further on in my report you can see that we did send people to help Doncaster staff, and we learned from certainly from that exercise. Anybody who's run anything knows that you can look at exercises on paper, but when you actually run them, all sorts of different things happen. And so, actually, running this exercise, we learned a lot, and I'm sure we'll run a lot more in the future. With that, I'll move my report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you for that, Councillor Shaw. Are there any questions or brief comments to Councillor Shaw on his report? No. Councillor Gordon.
It's less on the report, more on your portfolio in general. And I was just wondering, in terms of, obviously, as being still relatively new councillor here, I didn't know what the arrangements were with council staff and councillors' pensions, and whether we've looked at decarbonising that pension pot. I know obviously that sort of straddles the two between you as sort of resources and also environment, but I didn't know if that might be another way that we could do something meaningful and relatively as a sort of quick win.
I'm sure we'll look at that and we'll get back to you, definitely. It's anything that anybody, I think we've said in this chamber already, that we'll work together on things, we'll argue on things, but certainly on climate change or anything that we want to look at, then we certainly will.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Shaw. Any other comments? Yeah, Councillor Ahmed.
I think I wasn't going to mention it, but I'm put a little bit dampener on climate change, and trying to get you off the fence. So, climate change is, I know it's become a buzzword, and we all hear them, lithium batteries, and some of us need to actually look at the research and see what actually climate change actually means. And there's no offence to anybody in the council chamber, but look at the contribution that this country makes in terms of climate change. I'm not against any moral thing for me emptying my dustbin or something like that. My contribution of a 60 million population, when India, Pakistan and China, which contribute something like 25% of the world's carbon, with 3 billion people amongst them, I think we have to have a reality check. If we hear if climate change is a moral thing, then I will empty my dustbin like I do, and I'll ask my wife and my children to do it as well. But if we're looking at it from a realistic perspective, and this is to any officer in the council as well, the realism is that there's countries out there who are much, much bigger than us. I know we like to think that we're massive, but we're a small country with a very, very small carbon footprint in the whole world. So if we're doing it for moral purposes, tick. But if we're doing it to make an impact on the world's carbon, we're not doing it. So the fact is that it requires the international cooperation of countries to actually get somewhere with that. I just couldn't help it. It just annoys me really a lot. So really, reality in there. The second point that I'm going to make in the council chamber is agenda page 29, and also remember you were part of the austerity plan as well. Okay, so agenda page 29, elected members development, and this is I think the members team does a really good job, and I'm not here to criticise them, but I do think that as elected councillors we all come with different perspectives, different intellectual capabilities. Some of us graduates, some of us come with different things in there, and I would like, I'll be asking Councillor Farmer, because I think he'll be involved inside this, but take forward a perspective of looking at like CPD like we do for members of staff as well. So there's some changes that I will recommend in there, but I'll pass them over, and it's not a criticism. I accept the work of the council chamber. The members team has done, Nina, other people, and they do a really good job. But I think there's certain things that we could possibly do better in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Councillor Shaw.
I'm not going to really comment on climate change for obvious reasons. We do see it's important, and I think we've already said that, and we've put it on the agenda. I do take note in a number of things you say, that life goes on, but life goes on as we know it now. And I think there's a lot of people have a lot of different views on that, so we'll wait and see. Jack's certainly on it at the moment, and it's already said, the leader's already said that we place an importance on it, and we'll be putting a lot of effort along that side of it. Member development is really important, and I take on board what you say, and I will say that over the last 12 to 18 months, the work that the member development team's done has been excellent, but we do welcome any ideas on learning or anything right across the spectrum, so I welcome anything that you want to put forward, and we'll look. And if Councillor Farmer's going to be the one that represents on that team, because there's a representative from the Conservatives on that team, then I'm sure that he'll see that we have an open development discussion. So I'll await what you send.
Thank you. Any further questions on that report? If not, Councillor Shaw, can I just say, when you were talking about the people in the District Council that do fantastic things for charities, don't forget they could be included in the Mayor Says Thanks Award, and so I look forward to nominations of those. The next portfolio holder is for Skills, Digital and Technology Capabilities. Longest one yet, that one. Which can be found on pages 39 to 43. Councillor Graham, will you please introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Chair. Just a really quick one from me on agenda page 40, just to make everyone clear that the rollout of the Step Up project, we brought it forward and it will be rolling out in late January, early February. There will be a members briefing in January, the new year, to let everyone know what that will exactly mean for your ward. It is now going to become available to everyone in the entire district and not just residents of Nottingley. And no matter where where we locate it within each community, there will be outreach for any area that doesn't have the rollout in there. So again, it'll be crystal clear in January exactly where we're going. But I think it's such a fantastic project. You can see already it's got 13 people into work, but it's the work behind that really makes a difference. It's bringing on people, giving them the confidence to go out there and look for work in the first place. So I look forward to launching it in those areas, and with that, happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions on the report? No? Councillor Graham, thank you for your report. 2 pages went over together there, so I'm sorry, Councillor Spate. I'm going to revert back to you now. But the next one is from the portfolio holder for Culture, Leisure and Sport. Councillor Mrs Spate, will you introduce your report to Council?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a couple of things that I want to comment on. One, not so good news, and the other one, good news. The first is that whilst we're working very well and things are going great to an extent at the new facility in Pontefract Park, we have had an incident which is reported where Yorkshire Water Authority were doing some work and a main was damaged. That resulted in a flood to the pool, at the moment we do not know the consequences of that fully. We've had loss adjusters in, but we haven't yet received their report, so we don't know what the cost of that is. There will be an insurance claim, nor how long we might have to be extra on site to catch up on that. So once we have more information, I will let you know. But just to be assured that we're working very well with our partners and doing everything possible to make sure that things steamroll ahead. The second thing is better news, because I'd like to say it's not in the report, but we have launched again our Food for Fines initiative in our 12 libraries. And last year, if you remember, what we did is we offer an amnesty for anyone who has a fine on books if they bring in a food donation for people who are in hardship. Last year we had 1,300 items donated, which was absolutely terrific, and it equated to about £1,700 worth of fines. This year we're running it again, and what we would like to do is to do even better this year. So it's a bit of an appeal here, because I've been into the library myself in Wakefield one this morning, and I made some donations, and looking around I thought if every one of us donated 1 or 2 items, we'd really boost that, and I'm sure there'd be a lot of people that would be grateful. So it can be Wakefield one, or it can be any of our libraries. So with that I move my report, Mr Mayor.
Thank you for that, Councillor Mrs Spate. Any questions to Councillor Mrs Spate on her report? I've got Councillor Marnie Tennant-King and I've got Councillor Jones. Councillor Tennant-King.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to pass a comment about the CG60 Pedersen Start Centre. I actually went and met Liz Blenkinsop on the 29th of November. Unfortunately, my 2 work colleagues were busy doing something else that day. I know the weather was against them at times to get it completed. She did show me about, I was rather impressed. She showed me what they're going to be doing in the future with the dressing rooms and the other access to the building. But also it was nice to be able to see that it was actually going to be able to get used quicker than they anticipated, because I'd had somebody contact me from Pedersen Academicals, the football team, which they're voluntary, and they have 70 children every week,
trained there, and they'd been looking for somewhere else to train and couldn't find anything. So when I spoke to Liz, and she says they can start doing it from Monday, it's open. So that was actually brilliant, and they were grateful for that. And also onto the food with the library amnesty. Featherstone Library's already done that this past couple of weeks, and they've got loads, not only in food, but actually monetary donations as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Jones.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to draw attention to a young man called Max Litchfield, who's educated at Badsworth J&I, Carlton High, New College, and eventually went on to university, who finally was able to succeed in the swimming in terms of getting a gold medal at the European Short Course in Glasgow last weekend. I just kind of got lost in all the other news, but it's nice that somebody who, you know, sort of remember teaching him and used to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go for swimming and then come into school, do a full day at school and then go back again, training again. And it's nice to see that our facilities have been able to finally get somebody get a very good reward. So hopefully now we'll be able to go on to the Olympics now. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just obviously, I'm sure you're aware of the problems we've had at Ossett Academy and the closure. So on the west side of the city, we've no swimming facilities at all. So hopefully in the future, you may look at doing something for it. Obviously, I'd like to congratulate Denise and Jack on their it's promotions, isn't it, really? On your promotions. And just hopefully it's going to change this year. So I looked at the regeneration, and we're on there with Casper, Nottingley, Pontefract, and then I've gone on to the report for the leisure and wellbeing, and we've got Pontefract, Featherstone, Nottingley, and Southampton. I just hopefully in the future that we're going to get something in here for the west side of the city. Thank you.
Councillor Spade.
Yeah, thank you for raising the Ossett Academy. We are aware of that. We've been working with all the schools to try and sort out their swim lessons. Just to make everyone aware, the pool at Ossett Academy was built about 50 years ago by the council at the time, and it was a dual-use pool for both the school and the community. Over time it transferred to the school, and then when it was academised it became part of that school. From what I understand, it does need some major repairs, which doesn't surprise me given its age, because normally that is what happens with pools of that age, and we've also experienced ourselves. It probably doesn't help as well that on academisation there was a bit more extra money for schools, and now that seems to have disappeared. But maybe that will change, and you can hold the government to account if that doesn't come through. Because actually, given the fact that people from the north of England, I'm a Democrat. We've had an election, we've got a result, but lots of people from the north of England have helped obtain that result. So I hope the Prime Minister is true to his word and does actually give a little bit more funding, which may help schools in our area. So, but to go back to the schools, which I think is the important issue, we are working and have been working with all of those schools to try and squeeze them into at least one term to the end of the academic year, so that it meets their key stage 2 obligations. Then the following year they'll fall into our normal annual planning process and allocation, so we'll pick them up with all the other schools. And when the new facility at Pontefract does come on board, then it will be much easier for us to deliver. So we are doing our very, very best to help all those schools.
Councillor.
Sorry?
Councillor.
Well, I expected it, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Gordon.
I know you're sick of me every meeting, Jackie. I do apologise. No, it was just, obviously I appreciate accidents do happen, incidents happen, and what's happened in Pontefract is unfortunate. I was just wondering, I know obviously in there you say you're still waiting to find out what exactly this means in terms of going forward. I was just wondering if you would be able to give any steer direction or any indication of where responsibility lies, and whether this might mean that the local council taxpayer is going to end up footing the bill for it.
At this moment, I'm not expecting that. We have got insurance, so it will be an insurance claim. Yorkshire Water Authority, I don't want because the loss adjusters are involved, and who knows if we've got to have any legal actions or anything, I don't want to say too much. However, it was an accident. Yorkshire Water had a subcontractor on site, the damage was caused, and it flooded the pool. We are insured, so that's why we've got the loss adjusters in. Until we get their report, it took a long time before they could come in because we had to wait until we could empty the pool. It occurred at the worst time possible with, a lot of heavy rain. So until we get the loss adjusters report, I really can't say. But, the intention is that we make a claim.
Are there any further questions on Councillor Mrs Spate's report? No? Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Spate. The final Cabinet Member's report is that of the Portfolio Holder for Transport and Highways. Can I introduce you to Councillor Morley, who will introduce his report?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to formally move my report, Mr Mayor, on page 52. We've recently had the National Highways Satisfaction Survey, Mr Mayor, where we can see there's been good improvement in the Wakefield District's highways. One of the things I'd like to note there, Mr Mayor, where we see some of the most improvements is where we as a council have invested more money into our pothole fund, into our highways improvements. We've seen a stark improvement there. But it's also good to note, Mr Mayor, in the 20 categories we've improved in 18 of them. So there's some room for improvement, but it should show we are a good local highway authority that's value for money, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, we are moving on to some time of year we'll have some of our worst weather, with frost, with ice. We've seen the gritters out there. We've all had the email and press release about the council shutting down for Christmas. Well, Mr Mayor, we don't shut down for Christmas, really, in reality. The staff on our front lines, our VIN service, our highway service will be out there making sure that our roads are gritted, and also our contact centre, they'll be working 24 hours. So while we're all enjoying our turkey, our tinsel, and having a few merry drinks, let's just think about our frontline staff that will be out there making sure this council is moving forward and doing a first-class job, Mr Mayor, and we wish them all the best. With that, I wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you in the new year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Morley. Are there any questions or brief comments on the report? No? Oh yeah, I've got Councillor Marsden.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like you to pass my thanks on to Graham West, who actually came out and saw a resident with me over some pretty serious parking issues, and he put forward solutions, and hopefully moving forward we can get that area decongested. So just pass my thanks on, please. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any more comments? Thank you very much for your report, Councillor Morley. Agenda item 9 then now is to consider a report on the appointment of an interim head of paid service. This report can be found on pages 53 to 56 of the supplementary agenda. Is the report moved? Is the report seconded? Are there any questions in relation to the report? No. Any comments? No. All in favour then please show. Any against? Any abstentions? That's carried. We're now going to take agenda items 11 and 12 together. Agenda item 11 is to consider the Climate Change Emergency Action Plan update and can be found on pages 63 to 82. The agenda item 12 is to consider the Overview and Scrutiny Report on Climate Emergency, which can be found on pages 83 to 89. Are the reports moved? Are the reports seconded? Are there any questions in relation to the report? Comments? Are there any comments in Councillor Hemingway and Councillor Rowley? But Councillor Hemingway first.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And can I say what an honour it is to be taking on the role of Deputy Leader of this Council and of Cabinet Member for Climate Change. I'm grateful to Denise and the Labour Group for their support in that role. Following our declaration of a climate emergency in May of this year, we've begun developing a bold and ambitious plan to achieve carbon neutral status by 2030, and I'm proud that I will be driving that agenda forward for the Council. We are one of only 3 authorities in the region to set a 2030 target, and that commitment shows how Wakefield recognises the climate emergency as one of the most important issues facing us as an authority and also the entire planet. Can I thank NG, Council officers, Councillor Rowley's Scrutiny Committee for all their hard work on developing the plan so far. I will be meeting with senior officers of the Council to establish the portfolio for climate change in the coming days and want to ensure we hit the ground running. Ideas and suggestions are welcome, and I'm happy to meet with elected members who want to help contribute to this agenda. There will inevitably be obstacles and challenges, and we will need strong political support to deliver on that commitment. I'm somewhat disappointed by Councillor Ahmed's remarks earlier, but I hope that we can convince him of the importance of this agenda moving forward. And with that, I'll finish.
Thank you, Councillor Hemingway. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that Councillor Gordon actually was at the last overview and scrutiny meeting and realised the complexity of this subject, not only for the Council but much wider in the community. And what I'd actually say is that we are attempting to look at what we can do in Wakefield, and I think it is pertinent that the conference in Spain recently parted in disarray really without any resolve, that Canada and China and America are producing more fuels, more fossil fuels than ever, and yet we do contribute only of a small amount. So I accept what Councillor Ahmed is saying in that sense, but that doesn't take away from what we can be doing in Wakefield. And I think there are so many things within the Council that not only will result in less pollution, healthier lifestyles for people, but also a situation in which we will actually be saving people energy costs and using green energy. And no one could decry the whole policy of growing more trees. So we've got a whole variety of exciting things that I think are really worthwhile and should improve the lifestyle and the health of people generally in the district. So I think that's one of the reasons we've got to, as well as contributing in our small way to what's happening across the world, that's going to destroy us if we don't do something seriously about it. And all we can do in the future is hope that our leaders, both nationally and internationally, will actually start to take action to try and resolve some of the massive problems that are being created. I was speaking to a friend in Australia this week, and basically they've had more fires than they've had in the last 15 years, and the heat is absolutely unbearable. They're not sure how it's going to be resolved, and basically it's a little world, and we've somehow got to work together to make it a much safer, happier world. So hopefully we'll be doing our bit in Wakefield, and we'll also be campaigning through the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for other organisations to take that on board as well.
Yeah, our thoughts go out to those in Australia, as you said. There's record temperatures being recorded this week above 50 degrees C, of course, and the raging wildfires that's taking place out there. Councillor Martin Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First of all, can I just say I totally agree what our new leader said about climate change and my colleague here and what this council's doing and what it's looking to do. On this occasion, rarely I find myself agreeing with partly what Councillor Ahmed said about the other larger countries in this world, that they need to do something. And I'm just wondering, with us having a twin city in China, can we possibly write to that city and ask them, tell them what we're doing and ask them what they're doing? Because obviously we may get the message out there to that big powerhouse. And obviously I know Councillor Gordon's criticised when he first came on this council about what we do in this authority regarding waste and climate change, etc. But I'll just say one thing to Councillor Gordon. It's difficult to change things instantly when manufacturing went all those years ago, and it went out to the bigger countries in the world, the Chinas, South America, your Pakistans, etc. So in the morning when you get dressed, Councillor Gordon, please look at the labels on the back of your clothes and see where they were manufactured, because they didn't come on public transport or a push bike. They came because manufacturing's out of this country, and that all contributes to climate change. So if you tell me where people can buy things, especially clothing in this country, I'd be happy to oblige. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Councillor Ahmed.
Just thank Councillor Johnson for their comments. But I think Councillor Hemingway, just to collect some assumptions there, quite clearly said I agree with the portfolio that's been created. I think as a deputy leader, I think it's right that you do it, but I think it's being done from a moral perspective, because anything that we do, as I said, requires the cooperation from London, from Westminster, and it requires, if you look on 5.15, and that's the most important part of the report, that it requires a consensus from West Yorkshire, from within regions, because we can't risk our own development as a city and start imposing things that it has to be done collectively. So certain things like taxi drivers, having to have certain cars. We were sold, some of the cars that we're driving today, we were sold as efficient, modern, they've got carts now. We're being told now, go and get some lithium. That's probably been stolen from some other country. We can't do it. And I'm happy to discuss this outside the council chambers. I don't want to get into some colonial debate about this. But, you know, the fact is, I can do, because it's an area of interest for me as well, that Monbiot, John spoke about this in Bournemouth in 2006, about colonial powers like England, etc. I'm not criticising it. Now trying to impose their will on other countries, we have to do it in a consensus way. We have to work with the world that we live in a productive way to actually encourage them to reduce their carbon. It has to be done in an international way. And from a moral point of view, I agree with your role within there, but I'm giving you a sense of realism that it requires a cooperation that goes across many different areas, not just Wakefield.
Are there any other comments? Councillor Cummins, Councillor Gordon, and Councillor Cummins.
Yeah, I mean, I agree to some extent with what Councillor Ahmed says. I mean, we're a small country, we're a small city, but I'd like to think that we are doing our bit, and I think the seminar, and I'd like to thank Councillor Rowley, the seminar that she held recently around climate change and what this council is actually doing to try and help the environment. It was fantastic, but I do agree with Councillor Ahmed. We're a small city, but I think we do need to look at ourselves and see what we are doing to actually help the climate.
Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, so in terms of, obviously, there's been a few points which have been put to me personally here. So just in terms of quickly coming back to talking about clothing, like, we live in a world that's more interconnected than ever before, and the reason that clothing comes from other places is because people want it to be cheap. In this country, we're not a socialist utopia, and we won't ever will be. We're not going to manufacture everything, and it's not going to be at the bottom of your street for you. That's the reality of a world we live in. So I think to then sort of talk about something that's not really relevant to the climate emergency in the strictest or broadest sense, of course we should be trying to manufacture and do things locally. But again, we've just talked about setting ambitious and realistic targets. You're not going to just shut down a factory in China and build 100 factories here to build clothes right now. Like, we don't have, in terms of a workforce, we don't have a skilled enough workforce. We need to upskill, and that's part of the climate emergency and the climate challenge, is making sure that we do things in a transitional sort of period. That's why it's a transition, it's not an overnight thing. I think in terms of, we're talking as well about, in terms of the fact that some people are saying, oh, well, we're only a small part of the world and our impact is seemingly insignificant, some people would have it. I think this is a dangerous narrative, and I think you mentioned two parts of it. One of it's a moral duty to sort of carry out and do, and one about the actual impact. And I think it's about leading by example. What sort of council do we want to be here at Wakefield? Do we want to be one that's innovating and looking to be green and be bold? Or do we want to just follow other places? So I think it's really disheartening and really dispiriting when we hear people talking down, saying, oh, well, anything we achieve here is really, in the grand scheme of things, not going to do much. I don't think that's the narrative that...
No, accept the point, Lord. Just sit down, Councillor, and let him
Point of order there, I think that's incorrect use of language. I think he needs to withdraw that comment, because that's not what I said. But I will, as a goodwill gesture, I will offer my mum's sewing machine to him, so he can use that. But what I did say was morally, I agreed with the portfolio holder's appointment. I agreed that it was a moral imperative for us to do something as a nation. What I said was it required an international and a national cooperation with what I'll do is I'll make them bullet points and email them to you, So that's what I said.
Exactly.
So his use of the word is incorrect. You need to start listening a little bit more.
Okay. Councillor Gordon, he did say that. He did point that out. So if you want to just finish his speech.
The point that came up was that what we do here is relatively a small part, and we've got to do it collaboratively. But what?
Go on. I'll let you finish. Have you finished?
No, go on. Just.
No. No. He point of order. He said what he said. Please finish your speech, and then I'll take Councillor Cruz after I've had Councillor Swift. Go on, sir.
The point that I was making is that when we've been at the now renamed Climate Emergency Scrutiny Committee, we've had people talking about that climate change initiatives have to come at the expense of jobs, and that's just something that's fundamentally not true. We need to be creating, as much as it pains me to say it, is what Labour were talking about in the general election, a green revolution. And these two things aren't interchangeable. They're not diametrically opposed. We can innovate, be green, and also create jobs out of it. So I think it's just the narrative that we've got around climate change that just seemingly doesn't match up with what's been said by opposition parties here.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Councillor Swift.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I think it was just really to reinforce what Councillor Johnson was saying about the fact that when we import goods from the Far East, we export our carbon footprint. And the corollary of that is that if we're not pumping carbon into the air, transporting goods 12,000 miles, then we will actually not only be responsible for our own carbon footprint, but we'll also reduce the net kind of CO2 that's going into the atmosphere. I do think Councillor Johnson's point, carries quite a bit of importance.
Thank you, Councillor Swift. Councillor Cruz.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, it's just a brief point that I take offence when I think I'm a member of this council and I think we are making changes regards climate change. We get electric car parks coming in now that are popping up all over the district, and we can only do things in our own, not in our own time, but when we can do them. It is, you're wrong to say that it's insignificant, and the point about cheap clothing is a huge impact on this environment, has a massive impact, and to say that that is insignificant too, I didn't like that. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you for that. I'm going to take Councillor Rowley. You had your hand up, but you had one bite of the cherry. But I'm going to give you another one because you are the overview and scrutiny officer, please. No, I didn't ask. You asked for the point of order. Go.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I just make the point, because Councillor Gordon is not being entirely accurate in terms of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. One member of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Harvey, pointed out, and I have some acceptance of that we have to be very careful that on the one hand we are very much in favour of regeneration and creating jobs, and on the other hand, in building roads and more houses, we're creating more pollution. And somewhere along the way, we have to look at that and try to get a balance. And she said, we have to be careful that we don't destroy jobs. And I said, hopefully they will be green jobs. And that's as far as it went. It wasn't a condemnation. It wasn't the feeling of the committee generally that there was a concern in that area. And we will be looking at a future agenda about regen issues and how we can bring the two together.
So in other words, saying that the jobs we lost will be made up with green jobs. Councillor Gordon, I'm terribly sorry if you thought you were misquoted or something. Give me a chance to put right what you said. Go on.
I didn't say what we were doing was insignificant. The point that I made, and then the point of order was raised, is that I said that I thought that the point that Councillor Ahmed was making was the fact that what we were doing was insignificant. I didn't ever say what we're doing as a council is insignificant. I just said it's small, but I'm saying that in itself means it's still a step in the right direction. Okay. So it wasn't. I think there might have been a bit of muddling there. But
okay. Thank you. Councillor Fishwick.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to say, as you know, I have fresh produce at my greengrocer in Wakefield in Aubrey. The amount of produce that comes into my shop or I pick up from Leeds or from Bradford that comes from around the globe is colossal. It's absolutely huge. As far as South America, Tanzania, Africa, Kenya, all the places, and it all comes by air freight. Every bit comes by air freight, either into East Midlands, where it's distributed from there, or over to Doncaster, where again it's distributed. So the carbon footprint on our produce is huge. We develop very little on this island, very little. I try and do as much as I can with a couple of farmers from Stanley along the M62 corridor, which is absolutely fantastic. It reduces my carbon footprint massively, and also I have a recycling service that I produce every Wednesday where I segregate all my plastic, my wood and my paper that goes off for recycling. We're not doing enough, but in terms of the economic footprint with the produce, we're doing very little to add that to it. Thank you.
Councillor, do you sit on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee?
I don't, Mr Mayor, no.
You really should.
I'm sorry?
Because that was a wonderful speech you just made, and I think you really should.
Sorry to follow. It is a big thing, and I didn't realise I have a lot of schools coming in to see me, and they all take pictures, photographs, and they all want to know where it's all coming from. And literally, it's as far globe as you can go, really. And again, we're not doing enough. And just these little bits are just scratching the surface when you look in comparison as to what CO2 air freight's pushing out. It's massive.
Thank you, Councillor Fishman.
Thank you.
Any other comments on this report and the Overview and Scrutiny? No? No? Okay. I'm going to ask for all those in favour of the report, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? It's carried. Thank you very much. On to agenda item 13 is to consider a report detailing the New Children and Young People's Plan 2019 through to 2022. This can be found from pages 91 to 119. Is the report moved? Report is moved from Councillor Mrs. Isherwood. Is the report seconded? Are there any questions relating to report? Are there any comments on the report? All those in favour, please show. Any against? Any abstentions? That is carried. Agenda item 14 is to deal with any questions made by members. No questions have been submitted. The final agenda item is to deal with any motions proposed by members, and no motions have been received. So that was the last item on the agenda, and thank you, colleagues, for your attendance. Can I remind you, members, that that was the last one of this decade, and we will be having the next council meeting on the 29th of January. And I'm going to try a little bit of Makaton signing to you, which I learned yesterday. And it's a line from a Christmas song, and it says, "It is the season, love and understanding. Merry Christmas, everyone." Thank you very much. And then finally, what we're going to do now, that's the meeting closed, but I would like to call upon the Reverend Rob Drost to draw the winning ticket of the Shop Like a VIP for £1.50p. The winner will be escorted with my chauffeur-driven limousine to Morrison's, £100 worth of shopping, cream tea with the mayor, and taken back home in the limousine. That winner is a yellow ticket. Councillor Kay Scott. Once again, thank God. Merry Christmas. Thank you for all people that contributed towards that. That is the final item today. Once again, have a very Merry Christmas, a very happy, healthy, peaceful and prosperous